So today's speaker is trying to turn on her microphone. There we go.
Is it on?
I think so. Oop.
Yeah, it is.
Ruth Jackson.
All right.
And her topic today, I think, is going to be very important. The art of saying no.
Okay, the art of saying no. So the theme for this month is faith. And as usual, I wrote this talk long before I knew the theme was faith. But I think you might find faith scattered here and there in the talk anyway. Perhaps there's no better time to talk than the new year to talk about the power of saying no. You might reflect on your recent Christmas season and think of a time or two that no would have come in handy. So again, the topic is the art of saying no. I by no means am saying I have mastered the art of saying no. If I had, I wouldn't be greeter or chaplain, or do inspirational readings, or be in the choir, or be on the board, or be secretary of the board, or be up here giving a talk. I'm also saying it's the art of saying no, not the science of saying no. Saying no can't be quantified. No one's doing research on how you say no. It's your personal decision. I had dreamed of going to Alaska since I was 10. My aunt offered me a trip to Alaska, but it never happened. I felt like I needed to make it happen. The science of saying no would have said I didn't have the money, the time, the youth, the health to make that kind of an adventure. But the art of saying no allowed me to go in the summer of 2024 and have the time of my life. So maybe some of you have mastered saying no. You can take a little nap. We'll wake you up later. For the rest of you, I'm just going to share some things I've learned in my own life and things I've read. So you can remember these things by saying fa-pa-pa. You're like, what? Family, overwhelmed, purpose, protest, peace of mind. Fa-pa-pa. Can you say fa-pa-pa with me? Fa-pa-pa. And I came up with these, but I have a hard time remembering them. So I know if you only hear it once, you're not going to remember, but I'll say it more than once. Family. First, consider how good you are at saying no, and where did that skill come from? Is it from how you were raised, or a learned skill, or both? So a long time ago, I worked for a nonprofit organization, and I came up with a brilliant idea. It was so long ago, I don't remember what the brilliant idea was, but it was brilliant. And I took it to the boss, and I explained it to him, and he said no. Okay. After a week or so, the boss came back to me and asked why I hadn't pursued my brilliant idea. And I was in shock. You said no. He said in his family, when someone came to Dad with an idea, Dad always said no. And the kid had to come back with a revised idea or pester Dad until Dad gave in. I said, well, in my family, no meant no. So if you have a hard time saying no, maybe part of the problem is your upbringing. On the other hand, maybe life experience has influenced your ability to say no. Maybe you tried it and it didn't work out so well. So you didn't try again. My example of saying no for family is when I was offered the job of my dreams. My years of service and my education had primed me for an executive director position in a program serving adults with disabilities. The CEO of a respected organization in Sacramento, California, called me and offered for me to work for her for 2 years, then she'd retire and I would take her position. Perfect. Everything I'd ever dreamed of. But my husband had just had back surgery, and there was no way we were moving to Sacramento. So I made the toughest call of my life and called her and said no. I didn't resent it. It was just what was right for family. When do we consider saying no? I think it's when saying yes is not good for you or your family or your friends. The F in fa-pa-pa is for family and friends. The O is for overwhelmed. That's when you can't take on one more thing. And sometimes you aren't even aware of how overwhelmed you've become. Life and obligations creep up on you. I was always honored when an organization asked me to join the board or be an officer. I found myself working a full-time job, dealing with a husband with multiple health issues, and being involved many evenings and most weekends with organizational obligations. My husband said, "Are you avoiding being around me? You're never here. Am I a priority to you?" Well, that made me mad. Look what all the good I'm doing. What a good person I am. How could you say that? And then I reflected and thought my priorities were off. He was right. I was so busy I'd forgotten where I needed to be. I looked at each organization and said no to all but a few. I made my husband my top priority, and I'm glad I did, because my time with him went by fast. I thought about adding priority, but then it would be fop, pop, pop, pop. That might be too many P's. In their book, The Power of No, James Altucher and Claudia Azula Altucher, and I'm just going to say James and Claudia whenever I refer to them again, so I don't have to say all that, said it's hard to create a positive outlook when we have a genetic fear built in over generations. Our ancestors lived short lives. They feared a lack of food, the attack from enemies and dangerous creatures. In more recent history, our families have faced wars, the Depression, and recently the pandemic. These genetic fears can be enhanced by your family and your life experience. It's no easy task to get past all that. Then there's your current life, maybe your health, or your work, or your family. We need to get back to just being whelmed. One way to find your way back from overwhelmed is to look to your purpose. Is what you're doing in line with your purpose? If you know your life purpose, then you can easily judge when an opportunity aligns with it or not. Jesus, when he was 12, stayed in the temple and listened to his elders. That worried his parents, but he was calm in his decision because it aligned with his life purpose. A moment of purpose that I remember is when I went to a local company that had hired one of my clients who was deaf. She was having issues, and I was meeting with her and her supervisor to try to resolve it. She felt people were talking about her. Well, she's the new person and she's deaf, which is different. Maybe they were. But the deaf person only sees facial expressions and body language, and they can't hear the words. Maybe they weren't being negative. Maybe they were being positive. Who knew? But we talked about it, and we agreed to teach her coworkers some sign language. They were thrilled to be able to say good morning, break time, good job, good night, and it made all the difference. We also taught them the ABCs. I'm not going to do all of them because I can't yet. But those of you who knew me in May and June know that I couldn't do any of it. So ABC is pretty impressive. That way they could talk in more depth if they do the alphabet. And they could also write back and forth. We also had the boss outline what she was going to say at a staff meeting and then give minutes of the staff meeting to the deaf person so that anything she missed during the meeting she would have in writing. And it made all the difference. I left feeling like I was fulfilling my purpose in being a rehab counselor. I had a few other moments like that in my 20 years of service, but not nearly enough. Pa-pa-pa, family, overwhelmed, purpose, and now protest. And per Peggy. You may say no as a form of protest. Currently, there's a lot of people out on the streets saying no. My protest story is about all the counselors in my office. A new supervisor suggested we leave our file cabinets unlocked so clerical staff would have easy access to the files. That was against our department policies and our certified rehabilitation counselor code of ethics. All of the counselors in unison said no. And the supervisor said, "Oh, well, all right then." Sometimes you have to protest. The last P in pa-pa-pa is peace of mind. It's not so much you're overwhelmed with work and other obligations. It's just that you know yes is not the right answer. I think relationships fall into this category. So often there's no good reason to say no, but your gut says no. James and Claudia say you have to filter the people you allow in your life. That circles back to learning to say no through life experience. You probably said yes to a relationship when you were younger, and when you look back on it, you're like, that should have been a no. James and Claudia say that we often beat ourselves up in a way we would never beat up another person. Your peace of mind may start with loving and appreciating yourself. Closely related to no spelled N-O is no spelled K-N-O-W. Maybe that's where faith comes in. We're all old enough to have experiences that have taught us when something is right. You can say no because you know. I think that feeling of knowing might be divine intervention. When I fell in May and broke my shoulder, the paramedics said they were going to sit me up, and I said no. They said they were going to stand me up, and I said no. And they said, one paramedic said, well, Mrs. Jackson, how do you propose we get you to the hospital? I said, I don't know, but you're not sitting me up and you're not standing me up. So they slipped a blanket under me and they carried me to the gurney flat. After my surgery, my surgeon said that my humerus, which that day was not very humorous at all, was displacing my brachial artery. And with additional movement, it could have burst and I would have bled to death right there in my front yard. My saying no had to be divine intervention. I didn't know about the artery. I just knew I had to stay stable. If you aren't good at saying no, maybe you should start with something simple, like the food you eat, or not making a donation to every organization that asks, except for Unity. I said that for Brian, and he's not here to enjoy it. It takes practice, especially if you're a people pleaser. You may not see me as mousy. Most of you who know me don't see me as mousy. But at one time, I had the inability to say no, even in a situation where anybody else in the world would have said no. I'm thinking my mid-20s. I was traveling from LA through Santa Barbara, and we stopped at a Denny's. I ordered an iced tea. It tasted profoundly like dirty dishwater. And I'm not saying that I know what dirty dishwater tastes like, but it tasted like I think dirty dishwater would taste. And I kind of pushed it away. And whoever I was with, might have been Jill. Yeah, Jill's saying yes. Said, send it back. And I said, I just won't drink it. And they said, send it back. And so my mousiest voice, I said to the waiter, this tea tastes funny. And so they took it away and they brought me a new tea that tasted fine. Ew! What was in that first one? So I'm not advocating that you be rude or make a scene, but if the salmon is undercooked, ask them to cook it a little more. If you ordered a veggie plate and they brought you a steak, send it back, unless you want that steak. So the daily word from March 13th, 2025, talked about God-centered contentment. It said, amidst the rolling waves of daily life, I relax and find my calm center. As I release my need for control, my faith in God's presence gently steers me toward contentment. I release my grip on how I think things should be and find peace by being content with all outcomes. Peace of mind, priceless. Once you've mastered the little no's, you can start on the big no's. The big no's usually involve a relationship or authority. A big no may be on principle or when something needs to be a law or the law needs to be changed. The big no's don't always work out in your favor, but you have to take a stand. Jesus said no to the Pharisees. He did not acknowledge their authority, or rather he pointed out to them flaws that they couldn't see in themselves. Confronting the Pharisees did not turn out well for Jesus, except that it fulfilled his purpose on the earth and changed the world. The Fillmores said no to the literal explanation of hell. They taught that hell was not a physical location, but a state of mental and spiritual disharmony. Many churches in their day, and I think today, controlled their congregations through fear of damnation and burning in hell. The Fillmores said no to that, and like-minded people like us are here today to live more fulfilled lives thanks to the stand that they took. Related to a solid no is negation. In the book Discover Your Divinity, by Linda Martella-Whitsitt and Deanne Weir-Morency. There's a chapter on using negation in your prayers. Just as we can affirm truth to shift our consciousness, we can negate false beliefs to shift our consciousness. They go on to say, negations support our power to refuse or reject. Negations are a conscious choice to remove power from an old thought or belief. An example would be that all the men in your ancestry die at the age of 60, and you are 59. Your prayer could sound like this. I deny that my life expectancy is based on my family history. I will live in good health and will peacefully transition in my own time. So there. Matthew McConaughey, in his book Green Lights, said that he held out for 24 months, refusing any script that was a rom-com. He had become typecast and stood firm that he wanted a dramatic role. Script after script came to him for more rom-coms. After 2 years, the dramatic role was offered, and he accepted it. He took a financial hit and an emotional hit, but he had faith that the right script would eventually come. His strong no led to an absolute yes. And that's why we work on our no's, so we have better yeses. We say yes for the same reasons we say no. For our family, our friends, our loved ones, and ourselves. James and Claudia say that we can find a solid friend or spouse the same way we tune a radio. You hear the static or music you don't like, and you keep tuning. When you hit a channel that's playing your kind of music, you say, yes, this is the one. Same with people. When formally overwhelmed, you now have time to say a solid yes. James and Claudia suggested a got done list instead of a to-do list. They said a to-do list usually has more than anybody could do in 24 hours, and it's just frustrating. A got done list, you do at the end of the day, and it makes you feel really good about, wow, I got this done and I got that done. Personally, I can't get past having both, but it's a good idea. So the art of saying no is to explore your current ability to say no and ponder if it's related to your upbringing, your life experience, or both. The art of saying no is to consider your own needs and those of your family and friends. The art of saying no is to stay no more than whelmed. The art of saying no is to know your purpose and to make decisions in line with that purpose. The art of saying no is to protest when necessary, without anger or violence, but with the power of what's right. The art of saying no is to maintain your peace of mind. Before you answer any difficult situation in 2026, run it through the FAPAPA test. Family, overwhelmed, purpose, protest, peace of mind. Practice your no's until you get a solid yes. Amen.